set, and I'll start the meeting.
This meeting is being recorded.
We're good to go.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to this meeting of the Hayward Council Sustainability Committee. And I'm calling the meeting to order, and we will begin with a roll call for the committee members.
Chair Mendel?
Yes, here.
Councilmember Marquez? Councilmember Zemania?
Spider-Man and I are here.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Next up, we have general public comments. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to the committee on items that are not on today's agenda, Anyone who wants to speak to items that are on the agenda will have a separate public comment for each item. So if you want to speak to the committee now on an item that's not on today's agenda, please raise your hand electronically, and we'll unmute you and give you 3 minutes. I see Ellie and Taylor, but they're not raising their hands. So I'm going to go ahead and close the general public comment.
Chair.
And I'm sorry.
Chair, I just wanted to note that we did receive some public comments.
Oh, thank you for the reminder. I'm sorry. Thank you. We did receive a couple of written comments on an item that was on our last meeting about the noise ordinance. And I want to thank those members of the public for submitting those detailed letters in writing. They are available to anyone on the website as an item that was received after the posting of the agenda. So they're available to everyone. They've been forwarded to members of the committee. I know I've read them. I'm sure my colleagues have or will tonight. And they've also been forwarded to the entire council, which is good because the entire council is going to be making the ultimate decision on the noise ordinance. And if staff would be sure to include them as attachments when that item does come forward, so that again, people will have it when that item comes up for the next discussion or a council vote, I would appreciate it. Okay, thank you, Councilmember Marquez, for reminding me. I almost forgot.
Councilmember Mendel, Chair Mendel. We also received correspondence just 10 minutes before the meeting about nuclear energy. I have not had a chance to read it. It's a multi-page correspondence from East Bay Clean Power Alliance.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get somebody from the East Bay Clean Power Alliance joining to speak on that item. If not, we can maybe someone on your team can just briefly summarize it, at least the essence of it, so that in case, because it did come in late, and in case the committee members haven't seen it yet, I'd like to at least provide a general summary. So,
great.
Yeah, we got a couple minutes before we get to that point, and hopefully someone will be ready to summarize it.
Thank you.
And thank you for that. Okay, so we've closed the public comment, the general one. We'll move on to our first action item, which is the minutes from the September 14th meeting. Were there any changes needed? Doesn't look like it, so a motion would be appreciated.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Zemania, seconded by Councilmember Marquez. A roll call vote, please, Linda. Ms. Coe?
Yes. Chair Mendel?
Yes.
Councilmember Marquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Zemania?
See.
Thank you.
Perfect. And the minutes from September 14th are approved unanimously. Okay, so moving on to our main item of the night, and we did want to have a special meeting for this in case there were, a lot of folks from the public who wanted to comment on this. We wanted to make sure we had plenty of time and weren't rushed through it. So that's the reason for this special meeting of the Sustainability Committee. And that item is the default electricity product choices from East Bay Community Energy. And I will introduce our Director of Public Works, Alex Amiri, to kick off the item.
Thank you very much, Chair Mendel. Just wanted to say by way of introduction that 75% of our residential customers get their electricity by way of Brilliant 100 product, which is 100% carbon free. They've been paying the same rate as PG&E customers, nothing more than PG&E. This rate is going to change effective January 1, 2021. And we are before you to introduce different options to see if we can continue with carbon-free electricity or some other choices. Eric Pearson, our Environmental Services Manager, has a PowerPoint that he can start with. Eric?
Yep. Thank you, Alex. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes, looks good.
All right. So, as Director Ameri noted, most Hayward customers currently receive Brilliant 100, which is the 100% carbon-free electricity product from East Bay Community Energy. EBCE is making changes and may phase out Brilliant 100 due to the high cost of providing the product. And so this report presents some options for the committee to consider for a new default product for the community. We also present some options for changing the electricity product for the city's municipal accounts. We'll bring these options to the full city council in November. So today we're asking for the committee's recommendation. So for anyone who's not familiar, East Bay Community Energy is a joint powers authority made up of the cities of Alameda County, with the exception of the city of Alameda. Also, it includes the County of Alameda and the City of Tracy. The EBCE board is made up of the council members, or one council member from each member agency, as well as a board member from the County Board of Supervisors. Councilmember Mendel is Hayward's representative on the board, and Councilmember Marquez is our alternate. East Bay Community Energy launched in 2018 with 3 electricity products. They are Bright Choice, which has rates lower than PG&E, Brilliant 100, which is 100% carbon-free with rates equal to PG&E, and then Renewable 100, which is 100% renewable wind and solar for 1 penny per kilowatt hour more than PG&E rates. So in 2018, when the program launched, most cities selected Bright Choice as the default product. But Hayward was one of 3 cities to choose a cleaner product for the default. Council voted to designate Brilliant 100 as the default product for all customers in Hayward, and also chose Brilliant 100 for municipal facilities. And this decision was made because Brilliant 100 would help Hayward meet its greenhouse gas reduction goals, and also because Hayward customers would receive no change in the cost of their electricity. And just a quick note, those customers that are enrolled in income qualified or medical baseline discount programs were enrolled in Bright Choice. So Brilliant 100 has made a difference in Hayward's emissions. This slide shows the greenhouse gas emission inventories over the years. And you can see that from 2005 to 2018, we had a reduction of just over 20%. So we met our 2020 goal 2 years early. And you can see the dark green portion of each bar is electricity at the bottom of each column here. And you can see the electricity emissions have significantly decreased. And this is partly due to East Bay Community Energy. So unfortunately, EBCE is facing some financial challenges. One is that PG&E has increased its rates primarily by increasing the transmission component of the rate while decreasing the generation component. Like all community choice energy programs, EBCE competes only on the generation component, and the transmission rate is the same for all customers. And then also the power charge indifference adjustment, also known as the exit fee, paid by customers within a community choice energy program. This fee increased by 30% this year, and it's expected to increase again in 2021. And so as EBCE tries to maintain rates competitive with PG&E, the PCIA directly affects EBCE's bottom line. And then finally, procurement costs for Brilliant 100, primarily those associated with large hydro, have been higher than expected. So when the board approved the budget in June this year, they voted to modify the discount for Bright Choice from 1.5% to 1% effective in July this year. They agreed to make some changes to Brilliant 100, which are still to be decided. And then they also voted to not make any changes to Renewable 100. So this committee discussed Brilliant 100 and the options in July this year. July 14th, the City Council discussed the options. The Council noted that the default product should not increase Hayward's emissions, that a rate increase for Hayward customers is not desirable, and maybe nuclear power may be an option to maintain a carbon-free product and not increase rates. It was also mentioned that customers could be encouraged to opt up to Renewable 100, and then also that maybe Renewable 100, or that it would be the most environmentally friendly option, and that customers might be willing to pay the premium. At the September 16th EBCE board meeting, there was a discussion about the possibility of including nuclear into the power mix, and there were several speakers who spoke in opposition, but the board members from Albany, Pleasanton, Livermore, and Newark all expressed support for having nuclear as an alternative among the product choices. And the board member from Pleasanton even noted that, when they decided to join, they just joined EBCE recently. They did so with the understanding that Brilliant 100 would be one of the product choices. Then the EBCE Executive Committee meeting met on September 25th. And at that meeting, due to concerns that were raised about adding nuclear to the power mix, they discussed the possibility of using EBCE's financial reserves to subsidize Brilliant 100 and in order to maintain the product as it is. So at this point, we've identified 5 options for the committee to consider. These options have yet to be finalized by the EBCE board, but at this point, they are first the 100% carbon-free product that could include nuclear, and then Renewable 100, which is 100% renewable electricity. And then third would be the Brilliant 100 product with a rate increase, which is still to be determined. And then Brilliant 100 with a subsidy. And then finally, Bright Choice. Regarding item D here, the Brilliant 100 with a subsidy, the cost to EBCE would be somewhere above $3 million just for 2021. It's how much more than that is unknown at this point. It depends on how much the PCI increases in 2021. So here are the 5 options. Again, staff is recommending that the committee rank the products in order of choice, given that these options have yet to be finalized. And I just want to point out, as you can see in the third row, all of the energy products will include solar and wind because of the state minimum renewable portfolio standard. They will all have at least 35.8% renewables. The nuclear carbon-free product, column A, could have as much as 64% nuclear. 100% renewable would be 100% renewable but with a rate increase or rate difference of about 8 to 9%. And then there's Bright Choice on the far right. Bright Choice was 85% carbon free in 2019, but for 2020, it's expected to have much more emissions. And then the bottom row showing that all the options, with the exception of Bright Choice, would allow for Hayward to continue to make progress on our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. This is showing the average monthly bill that are paid by some different customer classes for a typical residential household. The average bill is with PG&E $44 a month. Renewable 100 would be about $44 more. So that's also the difference between Brilliant 100 currently and Renewable 100. For small commercial customers, that difference is about $23 a month. And for large commercial, it's about $3,000 a month. On the city side, we have approximately 450 municipal accounts that are enrolled in Brilliant 100. And while we spend a little over $2 million a year on electricity, the generation cost associated with Brilliant 100 is about $558,000 that we spend annually. If we were to keep the city accounts on Brilliant 100 and assuming a 3% increase, we would see that amount go up to $575,000 a year. And if Renewable 100 is chosen, then the cost would go up approximately $70,000 to $629,000 a year. Staff is recommending that Renewable 100 for municipal accounts. This would meet one of the objectives identified in the strategic roadmap. And while it's a difference of about $70,000, the newest solar installation at the wastewater treatment plant is expected to save about $150,000 a year, and the solar at the library is expected to save about $30,000 a year. So that difference can be more than offset. When the strategic roadmap was approved earlier this year by the City Council, there were some goals established related to EBCE. One was to move all customers in Hayward to 100% carbon-free electricity over the next few years. Another is to transition all municipal accounts to 100% renewable. And then another to adopt new greenhouse gas emission goals, which was done in June this year. But all of these are going to be more difficult without Brilliant 100. And the strategic roadmap is going to be on the agenda for our next meeting for the committee on November 9th, and we'll be just asking for the committee's input on some possible revisions to the roadmap. So we've tentatively scheduled to bring these options to the full City Council on November 10th, and then we'll have some EBCE board decisions in November and December. At this point, I'd like to ask Alex DiGiorgio to come on and present the next few slides. Alex DiGiorgio is from East Bay Community Energy, and he's been assisting us through this process.
Thank you, Eric. So Linda, you'll need to unmute him, and then I see his hand is up. There you go. And if you can unmute yourself, Alex, then we should be able to hear you.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead, Alex.
Great. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good, just making sure. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks so much to Eric and his colleagues for all the diligent efforts they put into grappling with this issue. And thank you, Director Mendal and Council members Marquez and Zermeño. I know that this is not what the city had anticipated when it first enrolled in this option. So on behalf of everyone at EBCE, we really appreciate you working through some of these unforeseen challenges. If we can move on to the first slide, please. Thank you. So Eric covered this really well, but the two things we're going to discuss are the changes that are proposed and that will be coming before our board primarily in November, not this month, but in November, regarding the Brilliant 100 service option, and then Hayward's potential alternatives. Should that option change? Eric covered this really well, that these are the three current service options that EBCE is offering. one detail that I wanted to mention was that it may be stating the obvious, but Brilliant 100 is currently carbon-free without any nuclear energy in the mix at this time, whereas PG&E's default service is almost half nuclear energy. Most recently reported in 2019, it was 44%. And so that's primarily where the challenge is here, because the cost of large hydroelectricity has gone up fairly dramatically for a variety of reasons. And one is it's both supply and demand. On the supply side, largely due to climate change, large hydroelectric resources are not what they used to be. There has been decades-long droughts, and with unseasonably high temperatures throughout the year now, there's not a gradual Sierra snowpack melt. So when you get into this time of year, hydro resources can be very much diminished here on the West Coast. And then at the same time, in 2018, you had EBCE and several other large community choice energy programs all coming online at the same time, and they were all trying to provide very admirably as much carbon-free power as possible. So there was this intersection of increased demand and diminished supply, which is why we're in the situation that we're in today. Next slide, please. So I think that Eric covered this really well. The only thing that I would reiterate is that, depending on what our board decides in November, the city could decide, as it has before, to put different rate categories on different default products, as was done originally. And other cities are considering this as well. Some maybe municipal and residential on Renewable 100, and Karen Farah and commercial on Bright Choice, or whatever the council deems best. Next slide, please. I've mostly gone into this already, as did Eric, about the background of Brilliant 100 and how we got to this point. But the crux of it is that Brilliant 100 currently does not bring in enough revenue to cover its costs. And so the status quo today going forward would be requiring it to be subsidized by other customers. And so that, while there may be some appetite for that in the short term, that doesn't seem like a long-term strategy for the agency or for our member jurisdictions. And as Eric pointed out, the cost of that subsidy is fairly uncertain. We know that it would be in the multiple millions, but because we don't know exactly how much the power charge and difference adjustment could be increased, that PCIA fee, it could be substantially more than what it currently looks like. Also, we can't predict what PG&E would do with their generation rates. If they lower their generation rates, that also increases the cost of what EBCE have to subsidize, because our rates are indexed to PG&E's, our generation rates, and so that would also further constrain revenue. Also, in that first estimate that we put forth, we didn't factor in load growth. And if we are successful in helping our cities increase usage of electricity for electric vehicles, cooking, buildings, et cetera, if we want to electrify the way we hope to, battery storage, we expect that usage will increase, and that's a good thing. But if we're increasing usage on a subsidized product, then that increases the cost of the subsidy. One other detail here. In June, the board closed Brilliant 100 to new accounts. And so currently any new accounts that are created in Hayward or elsewhere that were on Brilliant 100 are currently being defaulted to Bright Choice. In June, the board decided to close Brilliant 100 starting in July, not January. So that would be starting in July 2020. That's a typo. That's my fault. And the board this month in October will have an opportunity to extend this by 1 month, so that the current status quo of Brilliant 100 would remain through January. So if there were changes that the board decides on in November, and that if a new default is approved for the city in December, we would have January to do some very focused outreach. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the options for Brilliant 100 that are going to be going before our board in November are what you see before you. So the board could choose to increase the cost of the Brilliant 100 option, so it would no longer be at price parity with PG&E, but could be anywhere from 2 to 5% more expensive. Or they could decide to close the product entirely, in which case all customers currently on Brilliant 100 would have to be transitioned either down to Bright Choice or up to Renewable 100. And as Eric described, opting down would mean that folks would be spending a little bit less. They'd have a 1% discount, but it would no longer be a carbon-free product. And then conversely, if they were to opt up, they would have a 100% renewable product, but it would be at a premium. And then there's a third potential option. If EBCE's board were to vote to accept a nuclear allocation, that allocation could potentially be used to create a new carbon-free price parity option that would rely probably pretty substantially on nuclear power. It would still meet the state's minimum requirements for renewable power, so it would still be, at least a third renewable, but it would rely substantially on that nuclear allocation. This is a potential possibility because, one, the allocation has not yet been approved by PG&E. By the Public Utilities Commission, by the CPUC. PG&E has asked the CPUC to approve their proposed allocation by the end of this month. So assuming the CPUC adheres to that timeline, we should know by the end of this month and before your next council meeting or the council meeting that will consider this in our next board meeting, whether or not that allocation is likely to materialize. This third option, by the way, would only be available in cities that affirmatively request it. So previously, when East Bay Community Energy considered accepting a nuclear allocation, that nuclear allocation could have been integrated into our existing products, Brilliant 100 or Bright Choice. But since the board voted by a split vote 10-5 against that, in this case, this nuclear allocation would only be available to cities that request it. And it could be available either as the citywide default, or it could just be on the menu for customers to opt into if they want to. Next slide, please. I think I went over most of the details of the carbon-free allocation, as did Eric. What's different about this allocation proposal is that it would be for the next 3 years. It would be 2021 through 2023. In 2024, one of the two remaining nuclear reactors is going to be closed. Both reactors are currently at the Diablo Canyon facility, and the first reactor will be closed in 2024, and the second will be closed in 2025. So it's scheduled for full closure by 2025. It's possible in 2024 there could be another allocation, but it would probably be approximately half the size of whatever the current allocation is going to be. Speaking of which, we don't know exactly what the size will be, but we assume it will be similar to the one that was offered previously. And the last time the board considered this, as Councilmember Mendel very well knows, the board voted by a margin of 10-5 to accept only the large hydro allocation. This has been characterized as rejecting the nuclear allocation, but really what it was declining to accept it. And that was for the 2020 calendar year, and to be integrated with our other service options.
Great.
And I can answer more questions if there are about this when I'm all wrapped up. Next slide, please. So the timeline we have now, and it's tentative only because we're relying on other bodies to stick to their timeline, including the Public Utilities Commission and PG&E. But at the November council meeting for the city could consider two things. one, what its preferred citywide default service option would be, and it could rank its order since EBCE's board meeting is the next week. So it could rank its preferences. For example, Albany ranked it 1, keep the status quo and subsidize. 2, go for the nuclear allocation, and then 3, they kind of did different things for different customer categories. And then 2, as a separate but corresponding decision, whether or not the city of Hayward would want to accept its share of a nuclear allocation to supply this potential new carbon-free price parity option that could either become the citywide default or be just available for folks to opt into. And then at EBCE's board meeting in November, as I mentioned, they're going to decide, 1, what changes, if any, to make to Brilliant 100, i.e. will they increase the rate potentially or discontinue it or decide to subsidize for a certain amount of time, and 2, whether to accept the potential nuclear allocation. Next slide, por favor. In December, EBCE's board would vote to approve the default service transitions, if any are requested, for Albany and Hayward, and to a lesser degree to Piedmont. And they'll also at that time be approving the default enrollments for Newark, Pleasanton, and Tracy that will be enrolling in 2021. So in January, that's when we'll really be focused on community outreach around these, around any changes that occur. The current Brilliant 100 rate will again be extended through January, and any changes would go into effect in February. Next slide, please. Oh, good. We're here to questions. I probably created more questions than I answered, so happy to answer any if there are follow-up questions.
So I think what I'd like to do, thank you, Alex, and thank you, Eric, both of you, good presentations. You did a good job presenting a complicated topic. I think what I'd like to do, unless my colleagues have some urgent questions, is to open up public comment, and then after that to have questions and discussion from the committee members. Is that okay? All right, I see my colleagues nodding their heads. So let's do that. Let's move to public comment on this item. And to the members who would like to speak, please raise your hand electronically and we'll unmute you, and then you can unmute yourself, and then we'll be able to hear you. So I'm looking for hands to go up, electronic hands to go up. I see Jessica Tovar, if we could unmute her. And then Jessica, if you can unmute yourself, we'll be able to hear you.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, great. You can hear me.
Yep.
This is Jessica Tovar, coordinator of East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and I work for the local Clean Energy Alliance. We did submit a letter today. Our position is really, we recognize that cities are expressing their need for Brilliant 100, and we think it would be a good idea to look into options that would keep our power mix nuclear free, but at the same time provide what cities are asking for. And at this time, we were suggesting that one of the ideas is to subsidize Brilliant 100, since it is only estimated to be about $3 million to keep it per year. And my understanding is that already the board has created a rate stabilization fund. I think it was like $12.7 million allocated for that. But just noting that the net surplus was expected to be $60 million, turns out they have an additional $22 million. That adds up to a total of $82 million. So just doing that comparison, $3 million in comparison to $82 million is a drop in the bucket. We think that the program could subsidize Brilliant 100 if you need to move forward with Brilliant 100, but at some point it needs to be determined what to do past the year or two, because it's still looming that at some point, even if you took the nuclear from Diablo Canyon, in a couple years you're going to be faced with the same situation of what do we do now, and so we need to think about that. I think that the idea of keeping the program nuclear free is very important to the marketing of the program. And so we would like to see efforts taken to do that before actually tainting the mix of East Bay community energy and obviously the reputation of it as well. And I do want to say that we do have membership in Hayward. I was told by a couple of people they just couldn't make this time. But, I do speak for my organization and the organizations that are part of East Bay Clean Power Alliance, just to make that clear. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And I should note, we do have the letter from East Bay Clean Power Alliance. It has been sent to all of us. It came in a couple hours before the meeting, so I'm not sure if we've all read it, but we certainly will, and we'll make sure that the full council gets that before the November 10th meeting, unless you have an updated letter that you provide at that time. So I do appreciate you sending those details in writing in advance. Okay, anyone else want to raise their hand to speak? Just pause for a moment to let you do that. You got to raise your hand electronically. Okay, not seeing anyone, but I'll just remind folks this is we're not making any final decisions tonight, so that November 10th meeting is another opportunity for public comment on this item. And I will officially take one more peek here before I go ahead and close public comment. And I'll hand it over to my colleagues in a moment, because I want you guys, I think it'd be appropriate for you guys to weigh in first, but let me just throw out a couple of details. Alex did mention it, but it wasn't on the slides, that Albany's council did vote to accept the nuclear as their second choice. The first choice is to keep Brilliant 100 and have EBCE subsidize it. But they voted to accept the nuclear as an option. Pleasanton and there was one other city, I think. I'm sorry, I forgot what it was. So a couple of cities have already expressed a desire to have that. Pleasanton and Newark as something for them to choose. And then it was mentioned, but I want to make sure it's clear that the Bright Choice is getting a lot dirtier from a greenhouse gas perspective. I did in July 1st, it went from 15% natural gas. I'm oversimplifying a little, but from 15% natural gas to about 45% natural gas. So 3 times more polluting from a climate change perspective. And I think I mentioned last time that, the impact that would have on our greenhouse gas goals. If we switched everyone to Bright Choice, it would take us from a current 26% projected reduction, because it's 20% for 2018, but it's approximately 26% for 2019 and 2020. If we switched everyone to Bright Choice, the 2021 number would be around 15% below. And so it would be a huge hit to our carbon reduction goals. So I'm going to stop there, and then my colleagues weigh in if you guys have questions or comments. Just wave at me. All right, Councilmember Marquez, go ahead.
Thank you to Eric and Alex for the presentation. So if I'm understanding correctly, based off the last discussion, the last work session, tonight's meeting, there are some cities in support of receiving the nuclear product. And I understand you want us to rank our feedback. This isn't a final decision, but am I clear in understanding that every city in Alameda County is now part of East Bay Clean Energy, right? The last to join were Pleasanton and Newark.
Every city except Alameda, which has its own power company for the last 40 something years. Yeah. Yes.
And Tracy has now joined.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like what, 13, 14 cities total?
Plus the county, so 15 agencies.
Okay, 15 agencies. So out of 15 agencies, let's say 3 of them want nuclear. Is it still going to move forward? Is there like a minimum threshold? Like, help me understand kind of next steps.
You want to answer that, Eric, or would you like me to take a stab at it?
Well, I think ultimately it's a decision that needs to be made by the full board of EBCE. So It'll require, I guess, 8 votes in total to make the decision to accept the nuclear allocation in order, if that were to be made part of one of the product mixes.
And if that were to move forward and a city were to opt out of that, they're not required to accept it, correct? They can maintain that flexibility, that authority.
Right. So if there is a product offered that includes nuclear, then each individual city would have the opportunity to choose that as their default product, or to make it available to their customers. But it would be on a city by city choice. So.
And
be explicit about it. If a city didn't want their residents to even have that as a choice, they can do that. They can eliminate it as a choice. Yeah.
And some CCEs have already adopted a resolution to not accept it at all in the state. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And some have accepted the nuclear. It's a little split. I don't remember. I think it's like a third of each.
How many
Done
do we
each.
have now in California CCEs?
Alex might be able to answer that if we unmute him again.
Is it more than 20?
I think it might be around 30.
Okay.
So Alex has got his hand up.
Yep, it's between 20 and 30 at the moment, and some are growing also. Some of the programs like EBCE are including new jurisdictions. So the number of total are growing, and then those that exist are also growing in size.
Okay.
And San Jose, by the way, one of the largest, was one that accepted the full nuclear allocation in addition to the hydro allocation.
Okay. And I understand that we only know possible fees for the upcoming year, the 30% PICA, but we don't know after that, correct? That remains to be seen.
Right. For the PCIA fees, it remains to be seen how much more they're going to increase in the near term.
Okay. And I know it's pretty early, but it seems like there's support for the subsidy option. What would staff be looking at in the upcoming year? Because we're obviously going to have to revisit this all over again. So do we have staffing capacity? Just what would be the next steps from a staffing perspective from East Bay Clean Energy as well as City of Hayward to try to control the costs and figure this out within a year, which is a huge feat, but any ideas around that?
It's gonna be a challenge, not just from the staffing perspective, but just from the level of uncertainty that exists around that 3 million, which I don't think is a trivial amount even in its own right, but that's just a starting point. As I mentioned before, that doesn't include low growth. It doesn't anticipate increases to the PCIA, which are very likely to occur, which are unknown at this time. And it also doesn't take into account other rate changes by PG&E that can affect our bottom line. And the stabilization fund, I don't know the exact amount that's in it right now. I'd have to double check with my colleagues. But that rate stabilization fund will very likely need to be tapped to keep Bright Choice at a discount. So it may not be the case that there's this huge reservoir of funding available to subsidize a product even for a short period of time. The board's going to have that challenge to decide how best to proceed. There's also the question of EBCE's credit rating. We're working towards a credit rating right now, and the more reserves we have, the sooner we can get that credit rating, which then allows us to maintain more competitive rates, develop more local projects, and those sorts of goals too. So that's also part of the calculation.
What's the percentage of our reserves right now? Are you at 25, 30% reserves of total operating budget? Do we know?
I'm sorry I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I can get that information to you. I'll double check with my colleagues.
Okay.
No, I do. I know. It's $143 million in total reserves, which represents about 120 days operating expenses. So a third of the year.
Okay.
That was as of October 1st. We just had the presentation 2 days ago, Alex. That's why I got those numbers in my head.
Thank you, Director Mendel. Appreciate it.
And then does staff have any creative ideas if Hayward residents were to opt up for Renewable 100, is there any creativity that's non-cost associated subsidy with the city of Hayward? And I have no idea what that would be, any type of incentives, but have we put any kind of thought on encouraging people to do the Renewable 100, but I don't know, free parking spot at the library once we reopen? Who knows? Is there any thought process in terms of what we could do that isn't going to cost us money to incentivize people to?
It's going to be very, very tough to ask people to pay more. This was one of the things that the council talked about in the beginning. It would be very difficult, especially in this economic times, to do anything like that.
Okay. All right. Well, this isn't easy. I do want to disclose that I met with members of East Bay Clean Energy Alliance and Sierra Club. And I did receive Jessica Tovar's email communication early from Miriam. I don't know what the mix-up was, but I just verified it's the same exact communication. So I did get it this morning from our city clerk. But for staff feedback, where I'm landing is, and I know you want ranking, so number one for me is the Brilliant 100 with the subsidy. And then number two is Right Choice, which I know doesn't help with our goals. And then three would be C, Brilliant 100 with the rate increase. 4 would be B, Renewable 100, and 5A, the 100% carbon free with nuclear. And then I am in support of for city facilities for us to, the question was, have all facilities under Renewable 100. Is that correct? That was the question.
Yes.
Okay. I'm in support of that.
Go ahead, Alex. Mr. Amiri.
May I ask why nuclear was ranked so low in your mind? What are the reasons that nuclear is last?
The one thing I should have asked early on, and I apologize, but I was also informed that the city is a nuclear-free zone. We had an ordinance, I think, I want to say the late 80s, and I should have asked to see that, but that's my understanding, and I don't feel that it supports the goals of East Bay Clean Energy, why we initially launched this and put all of this faith into the community that it was going to be clean, renewable energy, and now we're backstepping on it. I understand why we're at this point, but it's just not something that I can support. And
so that's a great point. And if I may clarify that, the resolution that the city passed at the time was related to the production of nuclear weapons. It was not related to peaceful use of nuclear energy. You know, when we have an existing facility like Diablo Canyon, and it has 5 years life left in it, it has operated safely so far, and it has 5 years, like I said, of more production left. I haven't heard any reason from anyone, you know, those who have objected, why they're objecting to nuclear energy.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Marquez. Councilmember Zemania?
Yes, thank you, Alex and Chair and Eric. I think my fear of nuclear energy, I did think about the fact that we were a nuclear-free and free city way back, I think in the 90s. My problem with nuclear energy is what do we do with the waste, and that's a problem that concerns me. And that's why my fifth option is A. But anyway, just a couple of things. So if we were to decide that we don't want nuclear energy and EBCE decides to go with nuclear energy, what's our position? What do we fall? We don't let's say we don't like it. Let's say the city council says, no, we don't want anything with nuclear on it. But EBCE decides that's our best option in order to continue this. So what do we do? Where do we fall? What's our decision?
As Eric mentioned, the city council has the option of choosing whatever product that they want to. You don't have to choose nuclear if EBCE happens to accept nuclear as part of their product.
Okay, good. All right, good. So this is what's being between a rock and a hard place is all about, because we either go with a rate increase to our residents, we either go with nuclear energy, or we go with a dirtier option, and that, and we owe it all to PG&E. They're bullying us around. So one of the things I would like you to, including the other Alex from EBCE, is to start thinking of a way to attack PG&E. They shouldn't get away with bullying us. That this is not right. They're driving EBCE into the ground. They're trying to drive them out of business because they're taking their customers away from them. We need to fight them. We need to do something. So I want to see if maybe Alex from EBCE can start drumming up the forces and doing whatever. Start doing something. We have to fight back because we want clear energy. We want something that's good for our residents, and PG&E doesn't want us to do it. So it's not right. I'm very pissed off against PG&E. They don't like me anymore because I only give them $10 a month because I have solar energy in my house, and I drop. So they don't like me. Let's see a couple other notes. Okay. Do we really need to, EBCE is going to decide, the board will decide something in November. Are we going to need another meeting, this committee, in order to then make a recommendation to the council in response to EBCE's decision in November?
Well, I guess depending on what the board decides at their November meeting on November 18th, it's possible that we would need to bring this back to the council after that. So, which would probably mean early December. I guess it really depends on it may still be worth having a discussion with the council in November before November 18th.
All right. Okay. All right. So my position is I want no rate increase for our customers. I'm really not in favor of nuclear energy. Let's see.
But can you, for Francisco, can you rank the 5 options?
Oh, yes, of course. All right. So my first option is going to be D, which is the brilliant with subsidy. We don't know. It may be $3 million and maybe a little bit more. It sounds like there may be some funds to subsidize it, and the city of Hayward will not be able to subsidize it. So that's that. I would love to see that in effect. Number 2 would be E, a bright choice, although it is 5% gas natural, but it may be just for a short while.
50%. Natural gas.
I know, 50%. Yeah, it's a step backwards for us, but man. The other one, at number 3, would be Brilliant 100 with a rate increase of 2 to 5%. I can handle it. I believe the majority of the residents of Hayward can handle it, and there will be others. And I believe that the staff report talks of certain folks who do have discounts, correct, Eric? Their sons. So that's my third option. Number B, which is a renewable 100%, that's 9% increase, possible 9% increase. That's hefty. I think we can handle 2 to 5%, but 9%, that's yeah. And then the other reason why I'm not sure in the nuclear is that still it would only be for 3 or 4 years. I could accept it. Just because other countries do use nuclear energy. It's going to be for a short little while. And I must also tell you that I have met with anti-nuclear folks who drilled it into my head. No, Francisco, you can't do that. Let's see. All right, let's see. And I think those are my only notes on this. Okay. Yeah. All right, good. Thank you, and have a good meeting, Al and Alex, in November.
Okay.
We have a tough roadmap ahead of us.
So, thank you, Francisco. So I'm going to weigh in here. And I'm sorry to do this, but I am shocked by my colleagues suggesting that Bright Choice is the second choice. I'm incredibly disappointed that my two colleagues on the Sustainability Committee are advocating for us effectively. If EBC doesn't subsidize Brilliant 100, you're basically saying that you want to triple the amount of, quadruple really the amount of pollution that we're producing from electricity. That flies in the face of our climate action plan, of our general plan, and for everything that we've been fighting for the last 8 years that I've been on council, and longer than that for you, Francisco, and certainly the last 6, Elisa. I'm just shocked. That is not an option for me. Bright Choice. I will fight against that with every fiber of my being. I will be quite loud. I will be quite obnoxious about it if it comes to it. Bright Choice is completely unacceptable. We're in a climate damn emergency, as the governor put it, and we need to be reducing our output of carbon dioxide. And Hayward has made fantastic progress. It is one of the things that I am proudest of my time on the city council, as you all know, because we get to brag about it and talk about it and share in that success, and it's fantastic. I will not allow us to go backwards if I can help it. And Bright Choice would be going backwards. So not only is that my 5th choice, I just would never vote for it under any circumstances, period, no exceptions. I'm fine with Brilliant 100 with an EBCE subsidy as the first choice. I mean, I can agree with that. It's not personally my first choice. I think that that's an unsustainable solution, but for, the current year, I can accept it while we hope to try to figure out a better solution long term. But really, the only medium-term solution that is available that doesn't raise rates for our customers or cause us to lose half of the gains in combating climate change, the only option available to us that doesn't do one of those two things is Brilliant 100 with nuclear. And it's a 4-year solution that buys us time to get all of the renewable projects that EBCE has already contracted with, and some of the ones that we're getting ready to enter into contracts with, in the next few months, for those to be built and come online. And all we need is a few years. Those are going to take 2, 3, maybe 4 years on the outside to build. And what we contracted with EBCE did a year ago was 30%, 33% of our total energy consumption in renewable, solar, wind, new construction. And that's supposed to come online in 2022, 2023, 2021. And so all we need to do is bridge the gap for a couple of years until those are built. And when they are built, they're going to be cheaper than system power, because the contracts we've entered into are good ones that will make it a long-term sustainable solution. And as I said, there's more to come in that regard. So all we need to do is figure out how to bridge the gap between now and 2022, 23, 24. And nuclear is the bridge in my mind. Either EBCE can subsidize us $3 million next year, probably more the year after that, probably more the year after that. Sooner or later, they're going to say no and stop subsidizing us and effectively raise all of our rates or force us to make this decision again. Or we can accept the nuclear. 100% carbon-free, 100% greenhouse gas-free, costs nothing because it's free from PG&E. There is no other way to keep Brilliant 100 100% greenhouse gas free and affordable. There's no other way. I mean, short term, maybe EBCE subsidizes it, but long term, that's not tenable, and we need to be real about it. So Brilliant 100 with the subsidy from EBCE, I guess, is my first choice. Brilliant 100 with nuclear is my second choice. Brilliant 100 at 2 to 5% increase, I guess, is my third choice, but I'm not sure I could vote for that. Maybe I could. The renewable 100 at a 9% increase would be my fourth choice. Probably can't vote for that. I can't vote to impose that on all of our businesses and residences. I don't think that's appropriate. 2% maybe. 9%? No, I don't think we can choose that as a default. And then Bright Choice is my 400th choice. I only get 5, but you can put it way down the bottom. And I mean it when I say I will fight against that with every fiber of my being. I mean it. I really do. It would be horrible. And it would make me feel like the last 8 years that I've been on the council has, in terms of climate change, been a frickin' waste of time if we go backwards on that. I'll be so disappointed. So please be clear on that. And we need to be realistic about this when it comes back November 10th. So, looking at this, we're kind of all over the map. I don't think there's a recommendation, unless somebody wants to change their mind. I don't think there's a recommendation that we can get 2 votes for that's a single order there. Yeah, go ahead.
What is the general, if there is a general consensus on the board as far as either the E or the A on the EBCE board? Is there some kind of a direction that the board is going to, or there's not?
I don't understand the question.
All right, so we have option 1 would be the subsidy. And then an option 2, as per your statement, would be the nuclear option. Is there a general consensus on the EBC board on either one of those 2? What is the general feeling? Either subsidy or nuclear? I understand the point about the dirt. Yes, that I completely understand.
So there are only, I think there's only 2 or 3 members of the 15-member board who have expressed even tentative support for the subsidy. There has not been a vote. I don't think anyone has expressed opposition. So
okay.
You got to take that for what it's worth. It's a new idea that's been brought up recently. I'm not getting the sense that there's huge support, but that's me reading tea leaves, because obviously we can't talk.
All right.
I think that there were 5 people willing to accept, 5 of the 15 willing to accept nuclear a few months ago, and Albany was one that voted against it, and their council just, that's their second choice is nuclear. So that's 6 out of 15. I mean, it's just 2 more. And so I think there could be support for that. I don't know. Again, I'm reading tea leaves. And then most of the cities have accepted Bright Choice as the default, even though it's dirtier than PG&E.
Yeah.
3 to 4 times as dirty as PG&E in terms of climate change,
Okay.
which is shameful in my opinion. I will not let Hayward do that if I can help it. Seriously.
Okay. All right. So we're looking for a motion today or any kind of a direction from Alex?
Do you need a motion, or has the feedback been enough?
I think that the feedback is enough. We can summarize this in the staff report to council. There is no need for, a recommendation like that.
Okay.
One last note, if I may, Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
If the vote on the EBC board is in favor of option A, then I will favor it.
Option A. Well,
At City Council.
okay. You listed it as your 5th choice. Are you
Right.
amending that a little bit, or are you just saying you could accept any of the five?
Yeah. In other words, I go with the collective wisdom of the EBCE. If the majority of the cities, of the 15 cities in Alameda County, feel that it is the best option for 2 or 3 years because maybe there are not enough funds, I can go with it. I can take a couple of emails of criticism from some of the folks with whom I met.
Okay. Well, the vote would be to not necessarily that they think it's the best option, but they think it's an option worth offering to cities that want it. That would be the vote that might happen.
Yeah.
So, but that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, Alex DeGiorgio, I see. Go ahead. I see Alex still has his hand up. So, since you were sort of a presenter, for something you wanted to say, let's unmute him in case. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you wanted to weigh in. If you
Yes,
don't,
thank
then
you.
Go ahead. We can hear you.
Cool. Thank you, Director Mendel. I just wanted to offer one additional bit of context and clarification in case it wasn't clear, that while there's a very good debate to be had about nuclear power and whether or not it has a future, this decision about the allocation is really a unique decision in that by accepting it or not, it doesn't change the amount of nuclear power that will be on California's grid. It doesn't change the amount of nuclear waste that will or won't be generated. So any of the benefits, if there are any, or drawbacks, if there are any, are totally unchanged by whether or not EBCE and our communities accept this allocation. The real question here is whether or not our communities and customers should effectively pay twice for the same volume of energy. And I say that because our customers and communities already going to be paying for this nuclear power through the PCIA, through the power charge indifference adjustment. So if we don't accept it, if other CCAs do or don't, it's still going to go on the grid. It'll just be on PG&E's side of the ledger. So this is this very unique situation where we're not talking about making a purchase that's going to increase, build a new nuclear power plant or extend the life of an existing power plant or increase more radioactive pollution. It won't do any of those things. All it will do will be allow EBCE to access the energy that's already being paid for by our customers. And then on the subsidization question, just again to point out that any amount of money that goes to subsidizing this product will be money that can't go to more local development. And I know how important that is to the city of Hayward and the rest of our jurisdictions. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. And I saw, at least, Councilmember Marquez, you were raising your hand. Did you still want to say something?
Yeah, so just a couple of follow-up questions. So I did hear there's consistency with option one. It seems like we're all in agreement with the subsidy, right? It's just the further ranking after that we're not. So the nuclear energy, if we do accept it, do we know how long we have it for? I mean, there seems like there's still a lot of unknowns. And then to be honest, hearing that bright choice is so dirty, that doesn't give me any hope. Like the whole point of doing this was to have more renewable energy and not be so dirty. So we haven't been effective and we can't control that. PG&E is the one that's holding us in the corner, but I'm just struggling because I know the goals of our climate action plan. I was on planning commission. We adopted it in 2009, but I just feel like we're being cornered and we have really, really limited options and it sucks.
Yes, correct.
PG&E, it's PG&E.
It's true.
Okay, so maybe if there could be a meeting with the Community Alliance to try to have this exchange and dialogue. Obviously, we could all do that independent prior to the next council meeting, but it's just I don't like the position we're being put in. It's really crappy options.
So everybody on the, forgive me, were you done?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, everybody on the EBCE board 100% agrees with you there. We are being presented with some crappy options. I'm not like a huge, I don't think nuclear power is perfect, right? I would love to have windmills and solar instead. And hydro. We just can't afford that. So we're all being put in a crappy position where we're going to have to choose a bad option, an imperfect option.
So could we, as a city, Alex, control if we accept nuclear, that we only accept it for 1 to 2 years? Can that be within our purview? Put a real
Yes, you can.
Okay, so if that's the case, then I would be a little bit more open to pursuing it, but with a very, very narrow timeline.
That works for me. I mean, it's like I said, I think it's 4 years is the maximum that it is even going to be an option. So, if we put a time limit on it, that buys us a couple years until some of the renewables come online, and maybe EBCE can offer a greenhouse gas-free product that isn't at a premium and doesn't have nuclear, right? Or is at the very least drastically, rapidly reducing its nuclear, something like that.
So if we could put a cap of 2 years, then I'd be comfortable to continuing the discussion, because clearly there's still a lot more.
Yeah, it's a hard one. So this is my 10th time or so having it, and others. And so I'm just welcome to the club.
One more thing.
Go ahead, Councilmember Marquez, and then Councilmember Cermeño.
So my last comment is I didn't have a chance to go back and watch our council work session on this topic, but I believe I'm aware that there was a letter sent by our city manager to East Bay Clean Energy. So I'll just ask that staff please share that letter, not only with the entire council, but specifically the committee involved with that discussion. It's important just to have that information as well. I had to request it. So in the future, I appreciate that information be shared with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Marquez. Councilmember Cermeño.
You have actually confirmed that you're really greener than I am. Thank you.
That wasn't the point I was trying to make. I hope you don't feel like that was.
No, absolutely.
Okay. We're ready to move on then? Let me just make sure there's nobody throwing up a hand here. Okay. All right. Thank you all. I know it's not a fun discussion. Like I said, this is my 10th time having it. I haven't enjoyed a single time because it's a tough set of choices. Okay. Moving on in the agenda to our future agenda items. And I'll ask Mr. Amir if you want to introduce that briefly. There is a list of what's upcoming, including next month's meeting.
Yes, we have that. And if there are any changes that you would want to make, would be more than happy to incorporate them.
Go ahead and just jump in, guys, or Councilmember Cermeño.
Yes, Alex. Thank you, Chair Mendel. Our governor has set 2035 as a deadline or goal for going electric on our automobiles. Is this something that we can pursue in the city of Hayward with our fleet? Having some kind of a goal of having all electric vehicles in our fleet? Is that something that we can consider?
I think that would be a reasonable goal. The governor has said that production of gas engines are going to stop after 2035. But what you mentioned is a very reasonable goal. And I want to tell you that Fleet has been looking into it. They are experimenting with different electric vehicles. They purchased a couple of lawnmowers that are, ride-on lawnmowers that are completely electrical, and they are testing them. So they are open to it. We can do that. And we can also expand the number of charging stations that we have in the city. That is also another incentive to provide to our residents and businesses.
So maybe is that something that we can agendize for a future, some kind of a discussion?
We can do that, yes.
All right. And then it may include, for example, inviting a Tesla to open up a store in Hayward, since they are into electric cars and they're right down the road. So that may be a possibility. Otherwise, I like the agenda for the future months. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cermeño. And we do have our city council strategic plan does include a goal of increasing the number of electric vehicles in the city's fleet in the near term. I don't remember. I think it was 15 or 20% in the next 2 or 3 years, something in that range.
It's 15% a year, correct.
15% a year. Thank you. And so setting some goal of all electric by date certain would be a logical thing for our city fleet, for the city to do as a follow-on action. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And hopefully what we learn from this interim measure will give us comfort or confidence when we come back in a year or two to say, all right, by X date, all electric. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on the future agenda items or members of the public who want to raise their hands and speak on that? I'm not seeing any. So thank you. So we'll move on to committee member and staff announcements and referrals. Anyone want to chime in there? Not seeing any hands.
If I may, just
all right, go for it.
Thank you to Alex and to Eric for every time before a stopwaste.org meeting, I get staff recommendations on what we're discussing. So those are very informative. And the staff, the folks over at stopwaste.org appreciate what the city thinks about what we're discussing. So thank you, Eric. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. And with that, we are adjourned until our next meeting on Monday, November 9th. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.